put in the work, ask questions on your time that you're free. Go see other classrooms and don't expect to be perfect. My first few years, I think my biggest piece of advice or feedback that I got back from mentors was it's not about perfectionism.
Hi, I'm Crystal Luce, Professor of Education.
And I'm Amy Ketchum, pediatric occupational therapist.
Welcome to Plant the Seed of Learning, the podcast where we merge education and medical models to bring you science-based, practical insights on all things early childhood.
Whether you're a parent, teacher, therapist, or policymaker, we're here to help you support children from the start.
Well, we're excited today to talk math. Interestingly enough, math is a fear for many people. I'm
Mhm.
discovering in the research, it's stating that a lot of children fear math, especially once they hit the third grade. So that's why we wanted to cover this topic today to maybe alleviate some parental and teacher anxieties about math. So we're going to start off with a fact or fiction. Are you ready, Amy?
I'm ready.
Children begin learning math when they enter formal schooling.
Mm. That is definitely fiction. Children start learning math way before that.
Yes. Early math instruction actually begins from birth with foundational informal learning occurring through daily routines and play throughout early childhood. Babies start developing number sense by 12 months of age, with key numeracy and shapes and spatial awareness concepts developing between ages 3 and 5. So that's really early math, but I'm sure our listeners wonder what math instruction looks like in classrooms today. Because if you're a parent and your child is bringing home math homework and they're doing it a different way than what we learned a long time ago. So with each passing year, there seems to be a new method to solve math problems. And so we have Kristine Culp with us here today. We're so excited to welcome her. You want to
Hi,
say
thank
hello? All
you.
right.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, great. So Kristine Culp is an elementary school teacher based in Westchester, Pennsylvania, in the greater Philadelphia area. She holds a master's degree in applied studies in teaching and learning and a certificate in principal leadership. Kristine is passionate about creating inclusive, engaging classrooms where every child feels seen and supported in their own learning in the classrooms where each child feels oh gee whiz, sorry about that everyone. She specializes in differentiated instruction and universal divine design for learning, supporting diverse learners while building strong academic and social emotional foundations. Her work focuses on meeting students where they are and helping them grow with confidence and independence. In addition, in her classroom experience, Kristine is committed to educational leadership and continuous growth, collaborating with colleagues and families to enhance student outcomes. Her work is grounded in the belief that every student can succeed with the right support, structure, and encouragement. So, welcome. We're so excited to learn from you today.
So excited to be here. Thank you again.
So
Well,
welcome, Christine. So Christine, tell us what grades have you taught in elementary and what do you love most about teaching in the elementary setting?
Sure. I've actually taught kindergarten through third grade. So I've seen the transitions between each grade, which is very cool.
Mm.
It's been a eye-opening experience for sure to see each grade level and each growth level. But I have to say, I think the most exciting thing or the most fun thing about being a teacher is just the fact that you see life through a child's eyes again.
Mm.
And you get to you get to have this holistic understanding of a child that maybe, in a different profession you wouldn't see.
Mhm.
I spend 8 hours a day with them, learning alongside them and growing with them. And it's really cool to see like their big wins are maybe small to us, but they're big to them. And their big feelings, you can really have an impact on them if you just work with them through, whatever emotion it may be or whatever problem they are trying to solve. So I think that it's a career that can be rewarding as long as you are looking at it from that lens.
Mm, that is so true. There's nothing better when a child is having difficulty with an area and a light bulb goes on and you're part of that process.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, great. So I know we're talking about math today,
Mhm.
but can you tell us a little bit about the specials that take place in the elementary setting, which usually is K to 4 in some schools, sometimes K to 5? And do they incorporate reasoning at all into specials? Because reasoning is so huge in math. So I'll let you
Okay.
just tell us a little bit about
Yeah,
specials.
yeah, of course. So specials have changed over the past few years. There, especially in my district, I can't speak for every district. However, there is typically some form of library, art, music, and design lab and PE, physical education.
Mhm,
Within the district that I'm currently in, they removed library as a cycle special
mhm,
and input design lab. So library is actually incorporated into our curriculum when the teacher collaborates with the librarian, which is such a cool experience. Shout out to my librarian. She is so creative and ready to jump in anytime that she's asked to do something with classrooms. But yeah, there's so much reasoning. I think that, especially with design lab, you have that hands-on piece, that building piece. It's very student focused and student centered, which I think is a great format for a classroom. Those kids come out so excited, so ready to share their presentations or whatever they're working on.
mhm,
But there is a lot that goes into it. A project may take a full year because they are going back and they are, revamping or tweaking something or making it just that much better and using their peers as almost like their test subjects before the teachers see it or the parents see it. So that's just one example of, reasoning within our specials, but it spreads across all of the specials areas. You have music with reading music and writing music and learning how to play it.
mm,
PE with, how to play a game or how to change a game to make it more engaging or more fun. I mean, kids really do have the autonomy in schools that we're not, I think even myself, we're not used to seeing. And we don't see it because we're not in like, for parents, you're not in the classrooms every day.
Mhm.
mhm.
But
Yeah.
it has changed. It is really cool.
I have to say, the design lab is most intriguing to me. I had the opportunity to be in the building one day when we walked by the classroom door and it was super, super noisy. And so we walked into the design lab and the kids were working in partnerships, building a structure, and they were using the 5 C's.
Yes.
There was collaboration, critical thinking,
Mhm.
and they were so excited. And I think that is the best new special that I have come upon.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's some form of design lab in a lot of the districts around here. Just some maybe different terms used for that
Hmm.
class.
Yeah, I've heard it called STEM, the special called STEM as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
or STEAM. Yeah.
Yeah.
So classroom management is a very hot topic today, often causing new teachers to even leave the class setting. So how do you manage the classroom? Any tips?
My biggest tip is start small, right? I think in the world of social media, we get so excited as new teachers to have all of these bells and whistles and, the punch cards and the charts and the sticker stores. And I think it just find that one thing that works. I've had the opportunity to manage kindergarten through third grade. It has looked different every single year. Um, but just implement the things that you can handle and pick that one thing. If it's the sticker store with, a punch card that says, you get 5 punches for doing a job well done, go get a sticker, that's great. Um, but it just changes, and it changes on the grade level. It changes with the class. Your class
Mm,
management will change every year.
mhm,
um, when I first started teaching, I felt very much like I wanted to be the Disney princess teacher with this sweet voice, and then I was like, oh goodness, I'm getting walked all over. And then I was thinking, okay, I'm going to be the stern teacher from the Black Lagoon, and I was like, okay, this does not feel like me either. So I think it's really hard to figure out your classroom management. However, you just have to stay true to yourself too. So my two
mhm,
non-negotiables are honesty and trust in the classroom. All of my students, kindergarten through third grade, know that as long as they're honest and we build that trust factor, we're going to have a great year. And you'll find your way. New teachers will find their way. They just, like I said, start small and don't be influenced by all the bells and whistles.
Good advice.
That is great advice. Do many teachers take a more positive approach to discipline
I think
in
so.
their reward systems?
Yeah, I think so in this day and age, absolutely. I mean, there comes a time when you have to have those hard conversations with students,
Hmm.
or you have to lean on your leaders in the building, whether that's your head teachers or your assistant principals or your principals. However, I think most teachers try to handle things within the classroom because
Hmm.
we have that relationship with our students. Actually, one of my mentors actually told me, and he put it in such a great way that I am stealing it from him. And it's, you deposit into a bank, right? You build that relationship, you continue to build the relationship. And then finally, when you have to kind of, withdraw from the bank because something big happened where you do have to come down on a student a little bit more than you're used to,
Hmm.
that trust and that relationship isn't broken because of all the time that you've put into the bank.
Mm.
Um, so I think that's a lot of how teachers approach discipline or management or anything within the classroom.
Mm,
That's
great
an
tip.
excellent piece of advice.
Mhm.
Do you have any advice for new teachers? I know we're struggling in many states getting teachers. Some
Mhm.
people don't want to enter the field of education. Do you have any words of wisdom for them?
Um, I would say put in the work. Put in the work, ask questions on your time that you're free. Go see other classrooms and don't expect to be perfect. My first few years, I think my biggest piece of advice or feedback that I got back from mentors was it's not about perfectionism.
Mm.
Just, you want to put in the work, but it's about progress. And we talk to our students about that same mentality is progress over perfection. Your first year is not going to be perfect. You are going to work a little bit later, but that reward pays off in the end. I know for myself, like I picked one thing in the curriculum or that I really wanted to focus on each year, and that's how I've built the foundation to be able to teach multiple grades and transition between those grades. For instance, I loved the Science of Reading podcast when I first started teaching, and it really helped me build like my small groups and my science and my reading background knowledge. And
Mhm.
then I found that one person in the building. She is a reading specialist. She's now one of my best friends who I would just pop in and say like, "What about this thing?" or "What about this option?" or
Hmm.
just find that person and put in that work, and the rest of your years will come. I mean, we all have to start somewhere.
Mm.
Oh, yeah, so true. Community and relationships matter so much in any profession.
True. True. Also to help avoid burnout. I
Mhm.
know data shows if you have just at least one trusted coworker that you can talk to that totally understands your work and that you can celebrate the small accomplishments along with the challenges and venting, that the rates of burnout are so much lower. So just having that one person that you can confide in
Yeah.
is really important, and also just bounce ideas off of, get information.
Yeah,
Okay, so let's talk math. How does early math prepare children before they enter elementary school?
sure. I think the biggest thing that actually you both hit upon earlier in the introduction was that number sense and numeracy. Number sense is so important. So teachers teach off of a model, and it's concrete, pictorial, and then abstract. So what that means is, you have concrete items in front of you. We call them manipulatives in the classroom. And then we change into a more pictorial kind of teaching, where we use pictures and drawings to explain our math. And then abstract is, those equations or those problems that are just numbers, and students have to figure out, well, what is a group of? Okay, well, that's multiplication. Or what is all together? Okay, that's addition. So we really start small with our concrete. And I don't want to say small in a sense of not meaningful. But that is something that is so important in, birth through kindergarten. And even in kindergarten, they're using concrete and then moving to pictorial. And it's a transition that happens yearly. So even in third grade right now, with multiplication and division, they started with concrete and they had manipulatives in front of them.
Mm,
So I think it's really important to have that number sense that not a 10 is not just a 10. It is two fives, five five sets of two, or
mm,
4 plus 6. And having that conversation with children as early as you can is
mhm,
so important.
Mm,
mm,
yeah, that's good. And we talk about children starting to learn the foundations for math as preschoolers, but I mean, really, it goes all the way back to in utero as they're hearing mommy's heartbeat amplified through the body. I mean, that's rhythm. That's early math, right?
mhm.
That's their first introduction to math, which is, I just think is so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And math is spread across every aspect. I think I'm jumping ahead, but it's spread across every aspect of school and life. I mean, like you just said, in music, you're learning your beats and your rhythms, and in art, you're learning your geometry and your shapes and your symmetry.
Right.
Mhm.
So in PE, you're learning how many steps does it take to get across the gym, or how many times can you jump rope in your jump rope for heart challenges.
Yes.
It's not just in math. It's not just 45 minutes a day.
Right. So true.
Oh. Even outside play, you can incorporate math in so many different ways. Jumping rope, there's the counting,
Mhm.
there's sorting objects that you find outside. If you're the littlest learner, it's making patterns from rocks. There's so many things you can do outside
Yeah.
in the nice weather found in summer,
Yes.
some or spring.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent. So, what does math instruction look like in classrooms today? Is there a lot of whole group? Is there stations that kids move around in?
Yeah. So it depends on the grade. However, it's mostly split between whole group and exploratory, or some districts call it workshop. So whole group is, anywhere from 15 minutes, depending on how small of the standard you're trying to teach, but it could be upwards of about 30 minutes. And then workshop is the remainder of the time. So whether that's 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 45 minutes. When I taught the K through 2 band, we did like rotating centers where a student or a group of students were grouped together and they would move around the classroom, and typically they would move between like two stations
Mhm.
a day, and then they would come see me. So I would see about two groups to work on explicit instruction again, which means I was reteaching the content that I either taught that day or previously that I know that a group of students was struggling on. In third grade, and I would assume it's similar for fourth and fifth. However, I have not had the opportunity to teach those grades yet. But we do more of like must do's and may do's, where I have like a list of things or a few activities that I want my students to definitely do that day. And then they have autonomy for the rest of the workshop time to do what they want to do. But that is not like do what they want to do, walk around the room. It's do what they want to do in math games or math centers or math literacy. And that's within things I've taught, things maybe I am going to teach that I want them to explore. And then, of course, they see me as well. So those groups are more ever changing. They're not as structured
Mm.
as the K through 2 band. Those are students like in third grade. I typically will pull students that I know maybe just need an extra help on, the standard of multiplication or the standard of symmetry in geometrical shapes. So, yeah, it's very different depending on what grade you're in.
Oh, go ahead, Amy.
No, no, you go ahead.
I love how you incorporate autonomy. I can
Mhm.
say when I used to teach second grade, I would do a whole group lesson and the kids would move around in stations, pretty much in set groups. And but there was no choice. It was accomplish the task at the station. And
Yeah.
I think the biggest change in education as of late is all the autonomy we're trying to incorporate in throughout the day so that we're developing leaders and kids have opportunities for choice, which makes learning so much more motivating.
And it's teaching responsibility too.
Ah,
It's
yeah.
some of those higher level judgment skills where they have to maybe do some reasoning to make their choice. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great. Good stuff.
Yeah.
So you touched on this a little bit, but are there a lot of, can you talk about areas where math instruction is blended with other content areas?
Yeah, so I think that teaching today has been transformative, and we are teaching content from reading, writing, math, science across all content areas.
Hmm.
Math specifically, I mean, we just finished a science unit on weather and a measurement unit in math. So those two went hand in hand beautifully. We talked about liters and gallons and beakers and volume, and that was happening in math as well. So it just felt the day felt so fluid.
Yeah.
No pun intended, but um, and instruction was great, and students were really learning, which was awesome. Like I talked about in design lab, math is all over the place, and in
Mm.
social studies, we talk about timelines and charts and money and historical data. And that also bleeds into our reading with nonfiction and our nonfiction text features. So the conversation is always happening. And teachers just have to realize, like, oh, this is a good plug for math. I think sometimes, and even for myself, we get so caught up and we have to teach this thing and it has to be learned by the end of this unit or this date, that we forget, like, oh, this is a good plug for math, or oh, this is a great time to read about science again. um, and then finally, in reading and literacy, it's so important because we have stories and word problems, and those
Mm.
things are
Mhm.
seen every single day in math.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's great. I'm thinking about the next gen science standards. And
Mhm.
this is something new, but what I love about them is they tell you to incorporate and weave science throughout all subject areas, and not just science, but logic.
Yeah, yeah, and the thing is too, like with teachers, we have a scope and a sequence to follow,
Mhm.
and a time. So that means we just have a timeline that we need to follow and have things done by. And if you can incorporate your science, curriculum into your math curriculum, you're kind of hitting those two pieces, and then maybe you can move forward a little bit further with math or forward with science a little bit more, if you are feeling behind. However, that comes with time, and that is not something that I would suggest for new teachers because they're just trying to learn the curriculum in and
Yeah,
of itself.
Yeah.
great point. So I teach a grad class and we're looking at developmental perspectives. And one area we've recently encountered, one of my students did a little bit of research on math word problems and how to solve math word problems, you need reading proficiency
Mhm.
because there's so much reading that goes into those math word problems. Can you elaborate on this area and how literacy influences a child's ability to solve math word problems?
So there's so much that goes into literacy and math. I have it broken down in my mind of a couple different segments. So I'm going to go through each segment. But the first one is language comprehension. I think it's so important that from the time you start talking to your child, and this is more of the parent lens,
Mhm.
is have those conversations with them where you're thinking out loud. You know, you may think that you're talking to yourself, but they are sponges and they are absorbing everything that you say. So that think aloud is something that's practiced in the classroom with teachers and students, but it's so important for parents too, because you know you're building your child's vocabulary and their sentence structure and how they perceive, you know, a set of words to be could be different depending if it's reading or math. You know, for instance, when we talk about fewer, well, you know, in our daily lives, we're saying, well, we don't have as much as whatever it is.
Mhm.
But in math, it's subtraction related. Or if we're talking about in total, somebody at a cash register may say your total is, and that's okay, well, that's money, that's how much I have to pay. But in math, we're talking about your addition problem. So I think that reading comprehension is so important through language development. And it can really help a child interpret or misinterpret a problem, and miscalculate in math, depending on, you know, if they have that background knowledge or not. Some other things that literacy and reading comprehension are really important for in math is that sequential thinking and logic. When we talk about math problems in third grade, they're doing three-step math problems with different equations. So the first step may be multiplication, the second step may be addition, and the third step may be, I don't know, subtraction again. And so it's, or multiplication again. But really having that foundation of words and your knowledge of, okay, well, this comes first, this comes second, and then that's a
Mhm.
very like fiction feature that we use in the classroom, first, then, next, last, that sequential thinking. But it's really important in math as well. And being able to remove the fluff or the minutia within a word problem is very beneficial as well, which is comes again from that vocabulary and that strong literacy, sorry, that strong literacy background. So, and then my final point or my final suggestion to parents is building that background knowledge, just talking to your child. If you don't have time to read a story one night, I understand. We all get caught up in what we need to do, you know, between sports and routines and jobs and everything else. But building the background knowledge just in the car with them, talking about what's around you, is so important because word problems right now are very realistic based. You know, we talk about farmers markets and area and perimeter of playgrounds, and in some cases we've talked about airplanes, and I think that's so important because if a child doesn't have that background knowledge, if they don't know what a farmer's market is, we have to stop the listen and talk about that because the students will definitely hone in on that and be like, I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's such good advice. Give those experiences. Go out in the community, experience different things, allow the children to do hands-on and, different movement and sensory motor things. I love that.
You really nailed it with the whole comprehension piece. And I feel like with the science of reading, we focus a lot on phonics and also comprehension, but I feel like the pendulum really swung towards phonics more so than anything. But we cannot overlook comprehension because comprehension impacts all subject areas.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and it comes from conversation.
Mhm.
I think for young learners and for new parents, and for parents of young learners, I think that that conversation piece, you can read a story and read a story, and I am a big advocate for reading from your child or reading to your child in utero and, you know, every single day as possible. However, you know, having those conversations with your children is so important and encouraging grandparents and family members to have those conversations too. You know, it's fun to baby talk your child and it's fun to have those play moments. But I think also the conversations are just as important.
Yeah, for sure. Talk, read, sing. We say that a lot here, and I love that. Think aloud. So good. So, Kristine, we like to end each podcast with a piece of advice that we can give to our listeners that they can use today or tomorrow with their children. So, what is a tip or advice that you could give regarding math preparation, especially now during the summer, that children can do for school readiness, be it going into kindergarten, like their first time in elementary school, or, those early primary grades? What are some tips you recommend?
So my piece of advice is don't avoid it. Don't avoid it because you're scared to teach it wrong
Uh-huh.
or that you don't understand it because in classrooms today we are teaching math in so many different forms and ways that anything may stick with your child. There's no longer the thought or the pedagogy of this is the way, you need to show the way I've taught you, but it's more of a show me how you did it, explain to me. In our younger grades, we're asking students to verbally explain, not just written, because sometimes their thinking, is different than ours because we're teaching and we're stuck in kind of this cycle of teaching a specific standard or a specific way, but just don't avoid it. It's interesting how students' minds work and how children's minds work.
Mhm.
Some things that you can do over the summer as a parent is my favorite one that I love to suggest is just a nature walk. Go out and collect items and in a brown paper bag and come back home or wherever you are. And there's so many things that you can do with the items that you've collected. For instance, you could sort them. You can sort them into categories of bigger items and smaller items. You can sort them into categories of what the item is. Is it a flower? Is it a leaf? Is it a rock? And that's really pulling in your daily life or the surroundings with math, and it gives that piece of excitement because math isn't just numbers. It's not. It's more than that. You could also, if you're at a pool and you could time your child or how many laps did they swim in a matter of minutes and talk about, if they're a little bit older, you could talk about, well, how many laps did they swim in that in a time and that's multiplication or division. So just incorporating again that conversation piece is really, really cool to see and really important to have as a child.
That's
Great.
excellent advice. Yeah. And not to mention those nature walk opportunities encourage bonding between whomever is taking the child on a walk. So
Yeah.
that's really nice.
Yeah. And that's yes, that's the point too, because you don't have to talk about math while you're on the walk. There's so much more that can be so much more conversation that could be had.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing all of your wonderful advice for families and teachers, and especially new teachers. We really appreciate the time you took to
Thank
be
you.
with us today.
Yeah. Of course. Thank you for having me again.
And thank you to our listeners for joining us on Plant the Seed of Learning. We want to thank our guests, past and present, for sharing their knowledge and work. A special thank you to our producer, Penn Ketchum. You can find our podcast wherever you listen on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple. We can't wait to learn from you and plant more seeds of learning together.